Tonight, as you walked in, and you'll notice on the stage, you'll see two Marines and a sailor. You're either in a bar in a Longapo or you've arrived at the Shultz lecture series. Well, welcome tonight. And on behalf of the Marines Memorial Association and the Commonwealth Club of California, welcome to another one of the series, the Shultz lecture series, which I know have been a big hit out here and very successful. And I've been privileged to be part of some of those in the past. You will see in your program you have a short form, so please write the questions down there. They'll be collected by our staff at be in either end of the aisles and brought up, and please make them legible. I've got to read them, you know, and go through them, and we would like to get through as many as we can, and I know the CNO is ready and willing and able to handle anything you can throw at them. We are fortunate tonight in honoring our nation and our flag to have with us as our color guard the JROTC cadets from the Luther Burbank High School from Sacramento. And also to lead us in the national anthem as they post the colors, we have Liam Tiernan, who I know for you that are out here, you know him well, and those friends of the Marines Memorial know him for the many times he's been here and moved us to tears often. So at this time, I'd ask you all please to rise as we post the colors and honor our nation. Post the colors.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Forward, march, left, right, left.
Could we please have a hand for our wonderful young men and women and for Liam? Well, I have the honor of introducing Secretary Shultz, who this series is named after, who will introduce our guest speaker. I went on Wikipedia, but it was far too long to use everything that was on Wikipedia. I'm sure everybody knows that he's only one of two men that have ever served in 4 cabinet positions. Just a great patriot. He's going to come up and pull me off the stage, but I just want to say successful businessman, an educator, but most of all, a United States Marine. Ladies and gentlemen, Secretary Shultz.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Let me just say a word first about this series, because it has an interesting history and an impact. Mike Myatt came to me quite a few years ago, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago, something like that. And he proposed that we have this lecture series. First I say, Mike, there are more lectures in San Francisco. Why do we need another lecture series? We talked about it some more and we said, okay, our lecture series, we will have only high-ranking military officers. That's different from what everybody else does. So that'll be our series. Well, San Francisco was not too friendly a place. We had a hard time. It took a while to persuade any. Finally, we got Jim Jones when he was commandant of the Marine Corps to come, and it was a huge success. People came, listened, enjoyed it. And then we've had a succession. And back in the old days, the Marine Corps band could leave the base. Can you imagine the Marine Corps band not playing around? And so they came here one time when we were honoring Korea War veterans in Union Square. And my wife Charlotte got the streets cleared between the Union Square and the Marine Memorial. And after the ceremony, the Marine band marched down playing. And big bunches of San Franciscos followed them, clapping and cheering. I said, Mike, we just turned a corner. So with Mike's leadership, San Francisco, having once been a military town, and the military sort of abandoned us, everybody moved away, once again is a military town. We have great veterans organizations here, huge numbers. And I think it's fair to say that a large proportion, relative to population, of people who are recruited into the military come from the Bay Area now. So Mike has turned a corner, as he has on many other things. So my main point here is to pay a little tribute to Mike. Great guy. This evening we are privileged to have Admiral Jonathan, he says John Greenert, to speak to us as Chief of Naval Operations. He started out in Butler, Pennsylvania, managed to get into the Naval Academy. It's a tough place. They teach you hard things and leadership and knocks and everything. But he managed to get through that, but then he had another exam that was tougher. He wanted to be in a submariner. And before you can be a submariner, I guess you have to pass muster with Admiral Rickover. Man, was that tough. What an interview. Yeah. But you passed. And so he graduated from the Naval Academy, from the nuclear school, and started in, you might say, the first couple of decades of his career, he was underwater. Serving in the submarines. By 1991, he became the commander, the captain of the USS Honolulu, an attack submarine. Then he became commander of a squadron. Then he came up for air. And he commanded the Marianas Fleet and the 7th Fleet. Became very familiar with the Pacific Ocean and what goes on around it. And then had various other command positions, commanded the 7th Fleet. You look at his bio, there are words like financial management and comptroller in it. So we learned a little bit about budgeting and stuff like that. Became Vice Chief of Naval Operations and then Chief of Naval Operations. So you can see from this background, he's done it all. He understands from the bottom up the different kinds of ships the Navy uses. And with the apparent interest in the Pacific, I must say that any administration who thinks they're not going to pay attention to the Middle East is smoking something. But at any rate, it's good to have somebody who knows the Pacific, and also in this environment, somebody who's messed around with financial and controller type programs. So, Admiral, it's a great privilege for us to have you here, and we look forward to your comments and your responses to questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. I've been really looking forward to this. I see out here in the audience a classmate, mentors all over the place, and General Mike Myatt. Now, you may not know that. He served on the Navy staff. He was one of us at one time. Yeah, and a lot of the ships that were out there steaming around that are carrying sailors and Marines on, I think you put in the budget, if I'm not mistaken. The timing is just about right, and they're doing quite well, so I thank you very much. I mean, General Tony Zinni, somebody that I've admired for a number of years, and we had great conversations, so I'm glad to be here. By the way, for the record, I lasted 15 seconds in front of Admiral Rickover, all right? He threw me out, and they put me in a room, I swear it was a broom closet, and I waited there for 4 hours, and he called me back in, and he said, all right, what are you going to do about your grades? I said, well, I'll improve them. I'd have said anything. I just want to go home. I'm hungry, and I don't want to do this, all right? I was a senior in college. I just want to do something else. So he said, well, how much will you improve your grades? I said, 5, and he started yelling, and I said 10 and 15. Now, remember, there's about 800 in a class. How much can you improve your grades with one semester? And mine really needed improving. So I signed up some number, I don't remember, and years later, Steve, you remember this, we went back for the engineer's exam, and he wrote everything down. And he would pull out and say, hey, you said you were going to improve your grades this amount, and you didn't. So where's your integrity? And by the time you left that office, you wrote a check for anything you would want to a charity of his choice. And so this world has a way of going around and coming around in its own way. Secretary Shultz, thanks again for having me here. It's an honor and privilege. I want to talk to you a little bit about where your Navy is today and why your Navy is where it is today. I'll touch on some minor budget challenges, and I am a recovering budget officer, trying to get that out of my head and just lead the Navy, but you can't help yourself, right? You got to organize, train, and equip and build it. And then the Asia-Pacific rebalance. What does it mean to the Navy? And then, of course, I'd be happy to take questions in any subject you want. But talking about the Navy, we have to build ships. We man equipment. That equipment is designed, it is built, managed, if you will, there at the Washington Navy Yard at the Naval Sea Systems Command. So those folks are recovering now. So I'd ask you, as you, due to the tragedy last week, as you lay your head on the pillow tonight and just about to close your eyes, say a prayer for those folks down there, those, not only those 12 victims and their families, but also the folks that just saw some bad things and are going through a lot. They didn't sign up to do this, but boy, they're leading from the front. These are engineers, civilians. I call them our civilian shipmates, so please remember them. So people ask me, they say, man, what a job you got. I got it today, all this stuff on your shoulders. Folks, I have the greatest job in the world. I get to lead 630,000 people in our Navy, 320,000 sailors who join, like these folks you just saw that came up here with the flag. All they want to do is belong to something bigger than themselves and make a difference out there. They don't want money. They want a pat on the back every now and again. So if you see one, please do that. That's adrenaline for 6 weeks. We have about 110,000 reserves, and as I mentioned, 200,000 civilians who are very, very dedicated. The bureaucratic civilian you sometimes hear about, I haven't met them. I haven't met that kind of person that sometimes we talk about. If you put the slide up, just to let you know where we are in the world today. We have 285 ships you see out there in the lower right, and about a third of them are deployed out there and about in the world, and you can see the distribution out there in the little white boxes. We're increasing in the percentage of deployment. 2 decades ago, it was about 25% of the fleet. 10 years ago, it was about 30% of the fleet. So we're up to about a third of the fleet out and about. And you can see the Western Pacific, we got 53 ships out there. That's our focus of effort as we move ahead. And if you say, well, Admiral, what do you guys do? I mean, what's your thing? I say, my job is to have ships and be forward, be present where it matters, so that when it matters, we can react. And we can do the bidding of the nation, provide the President options out there. We organize, we train, we equip sailors and Marines to be out there. And every time I say Navy and stuff like that today, trust me, and it's not about being at the Marine Memorial, it's about Navy and Marines. We are a team, we're a unit, we're a naval force out there and about. So we reassure allies, that's a big deal today, and that'll get you deterrence, because a potential aggressor sees that you've got partners out there, it works, and it works very well. We're doing quite well building our Navy up today. Our shipbuilding industry is doing amazingly well. We have over 40 ships under contract, and ships are coming in today. Ships, submarines, big deck amphibs, littler ships, from all around our shipbuilders are coming in on budget or under budget, on time, and the quality is improving. And the reason is we have a stable shipbuilding plan today, and they're actually starting to make some money, the partners, and we're all happy. It's all going well. But wait, there's a budget. You know, there's dark clouds out here, and it's called the issue of sequestration and what it will mean to us. So we're getting by this first year of sequestration, and I'll tell you a bit about it. We were able to get by with an $11 billion cut, and that's about 8% of our budget. You say, well, how bad can that be? And honestly, we had money in reserves here and there in different programs that we swept up and helped pay that up. But all that is gone. We've used up the reserve. We lost some training money in this because we just didn't have it. It took so long to get a budget, and we had to react to the sequestration, ask for permission to move money and balance it within the various accounts. And so what we were able to do is get these 97 ships today out there, but last year we had 10 more than that out and about. So it's a matter of reduced operations for those that we train to deploy next year. That's what we're losing advantage to do. So the ships are out and about today. They are organized, trained, and equipped. They're ready to do the job. They are multi-mission capable. Next year's ships that we're training are the ones I'm concerned about, and we have to get that training done here this year and this 13 year. So far, so good, but we've used up, as I said, our surge, if you will, in money. Now, at any given day, what our commitment is to our combatant commanders out around the world, we say, we will have for you 3 carrier strike groups. Now that's an aircraft carrier, 80 aircraft with it, and 5 ships. We will have 3 of those, and 3 what we call amphibious ready groups, and that's 3 ships with 2,500 Marines in surge, ready to react to a crisis around the world, and within a week or 2, we can be underway and out there. That's kind of our commitment through the years. Because of sequestration and our budget issues, we have 1 of each instead of 3 of each. And the one that we have, we're using today, and that's the Nimitz. Our carrier, the Nimitz, is our surge carrier, and she's in the Red Sea today. And with Nimitz in the Red Sea and destroyers in the Eastern Mediterranean, we're providing that pressure on Assad and the Syrian government to meet their commitments that they say they will come forward in getting rid of chemical weapons. It is that your naval force is out there today being able to apply that pressure, tangible, credible pressure out there and about. But the issue is, and the concern is, we don't have the surge that we usually have. We're kind of using it up on this crisis here. So it's credible threat that matters. Next year, this 14 year, we believe, as the things are showing, assuming we don't have a budget shutdown that would perturbate it worse, we'll have sequestration again. And to us, it's about 14% of the budget will be reduced. Now, sequestration is a reduction in every single account. Every budget account goes down 14%. And then we ask the Congress, and we work with the Congress to rebalance our accounts. You don't want 14% in everything. Some needs 100%, such as our new ballistic missile submarine that's going to replace the one we have today. Hey, that protects the United States. That's strategic nuclear deterrence, and we can't afford that. So I'm concerned about that. We have to keep that one on budget and on time. So that's a big concern. We lost that flexibility I mentioned before in our shipbuilding account that we were able to cover in the fiscal year 13. We don't have that in 14, so we could lose 4 of our 10 ships that we had planned to build. And with that goes that momentum I was talking about, where our shipbuilders are on time, making some money, things are looking good. We will lose that, and so our shipbuilding industry is a concern for fiscal year 14 and beyond due to sequestration. And then there's the training that I mentioned before, reduction in our ability to sustain the training, have the ships ready to surge and get out there and meet the requirements. We'll have the ships that I show here, we'll have those out and about. It's the surge forces back here in the United States that take the brunt of sequestration, and that will be a problem in 14. But most disconcerting to me, is that ballistic missile submarine construction. So we're working with the Congress. Our message is clear. We need a budget. And if you can't get together and give us a budget, then we need the means and the authority to rebalance the budget that we do have, the money that we do have, so we can do the right thing and meet our priorities out there, out and about. So some tough decisions coming up. Now recently, you've probably seen the Secretary of Defense had us look out into the future. He said, give me, looking out with what are the strategic concepts and the kind of management changes that we would need to make. And he called that SCMR, SCIMR, Strategic Concept, Strategic Choices Management Review. What's my future look like out there if we keep doing sequestration for 10 years? So we ran that through, and that's where you may have seen in the news in the Navy, it would be the retirement of 3 of our carrier strike groups of the 11, actually 10 we have today. So that's pretty dramatic if we were to do that. If we had a future like that, this kind of presence we wouldn't be able to sustain, and of course the surge that we had. So it would be a different sort of Navy you would look at. You'd be looking at a much smaller Navy, about 260 ships instead of the about 257 you see up there. That's kind of what things would look at there in the future. Our plan today would be 38 more than that. In other words, by 2020, and that's a snapshot of 2020, we would be looking at 295 ships. That's in the plan today. But if we keep sequestering over and over, we'll be 38 down from the plan. The number forward might still be about 96, but our plan today was going to be 20 more of that. Out forward, able to respond, able to ensure that the maritime crossroads, trade is going and things are getting done out there. So it's our challenge in the future. My mandate, as I tell my staff, as we look ahead to this challenge, as we look to what do we need to plan. Number one, we have to bring forward the sea-based strategic deterrent. We have to build the next strategic ballistic submarine. Number two, we have to meet as much presence as possible out there. Being forward is where your Navy is at its best, out and about in the Western Pacific and the Arabian Gulf and those other key and critical parts of the world where you see the little squares. Those are the places that our ships operate in and out of, out and around the world. We need to make sure that our forces are ready. If they're out, they can't be hollow. They have to be manned. They have to be organized. They have to have the right weapons, and they have to be confident that they can use those, because that's how you will judge us, that we can go out and get the nation's bidding done and do it properly. But we'll be smaller, for sure, and I worry about the industrial base. I was talking about the shipbuilding base. You run a company, you know you have to have a predictable strategic plan. You have to have predictable capital, a predictable customer base that you can depend on and have conversations with, and they can tell you where we're going to go. So our nuclear ship industrial base is the most fragile, the one that we have a lot of sole source providers. And it's not the ones that build the nuclear ships. It's the ones that make the valves, that make the little circuit cards that are particular to nuclear systems. It's the ones that make the special steel, the special alloys, and do the special welds on those nuclear propulsion plants. Those are the ones we got to watch. Those are the ones we don't want going under, or we'd have ourselves a real crisis. So you see the scenario out there. That's the challenge. That's the fiscal challenge. We'll be busy with that here as we go into the fall. Let me shift gears for just a minute on the rebalance to the Asia Pacific that you've heard about or probably read about. For me, it's really 4 kind of key things that we're going to do as we rebalance to the Asia Pacific. One, it's about forces. We will be moving some ships out to the Asia Pacific from the continental United States. Singapore has invited us to operate ships out of Singapore, 4 of them. That's a good deal. Japan, we've talked in Japan to put 2 more ships in Japan. And when we have ships out there already operating forward, home stationed out and about, we don't have to rotate them out and back, which wears the ships down, and they're already in place, and they can react to what we need to do out there. So that's a key and critical aspect, forces. We're going to move our most modern forces to the Western Pacific. Our new aircraft, our strike fighter, the Joint Strike Fighter that you hear about that's going to be coming in late this decade, that's going out to the Western Pacific on its first deployment, about 2019. We have a new maritime patrol aircraft. Today we fly a 4 propeller engine airplane called the P-3. We're moving to a P-8 built by Boeing, and it's effectively a 737 with a lot of fancy gear on it that finds submarines and can find lots of things out there in the ocean, employ a lot of different weapons, cyber, etc. We're integrating that now. That will deploy to the Western Pacific first. We're taking an unmanned aerial vehicle. It's like a Global Hawk, only it's kind of marinized. It's got systems that can look broadly on the ocean. We call it the Triton, T-R-I-T-O-N, and it will deploy to the Western Pacific first. So you get my gist. All the new stuff is going out there. Capability-wise, we benchmark to the Western Pacific. What kind of anti-submarine warfare? What kind of anti-ballistic missile? What kind of cyber? What kind of electromagnetic spectrum warfare do we need? And it's benchmarked to the Western Pacific. We're moving our forces toward the West Coast, where the fleet used to be 50-50 balance, the Atlantic and Pacific. By the end of this decade, we'll be 60% West Coast and 40% East Coast. And lastly, it's about intellectual capacity, intellectual capital, focusing on the Western Pacific. It's about doing more exercises, more comprehensive exercises with our allies, Japan, Republic of Korea, Australia. It's about working more with Singapore down in that arena. It's about working more with Malaysia and Indonesia. And it's about working more with China. I spent 2 weeks ago a full week with my counterpart, Admiral Wu Shengli, talking about where we want to go together. What's the art of the possible? Where do we need to get started on this? What kind of exchanges? He came and presented 8 initiatives to do anything from student exchange to medical officer exchange, to have us deploy on their hospital ship and they deploy on our hospital ship. They are joining our big exercise in 2014 out in Hawaii. It's called Rim of the Pacific, RIMPAC. They're going to be a part of that. We invited the Russians, but they said, I can't afford it this year. So Admiral Wu said to me, ask them again. And so I did. So we'll see if they come, and we can do a trilateral. So it's about looking also what kind of protocols should we have in the South China Sea. When 2 ships, professional mariners, pass in the ocean, in the open ocean, remember the open ocean is international, nobody owns that. What should they be saying to each other? Because right now we don't really converse much, and so we don't want miscalculation. So what are the standard greetings? What are the standard professional protocols, if you will, that we'll have there? So there's a number of those. There's bureaucracy in this relationship that we have, and we've agreed, well, we're going to work through that. So he came to see me, like I said, 2 weeks ago. I showed him around. As you know, they have an aircraft carrier, and they have airplanes that land on the aircraft carrier. 5 pilots qualified and 20 in training, and he brought one of the pilots with him, the first one to land. He's a captain in there, which is same as our Navy captain. He also brought the commanding officer of the carrier. He also brought the head captain of the Marine Corps, which is a little interesting because he said, I want to go up to Camp Pendleton, Admiral Wu said. So he brought his Marine up there. Now the guy had a little bit of a gut. So you know what happened, right? He went up there and he saw our Marines. So Admiral Wu looked at this guy and he goes, I think he's too heavy. So we talked about this in Washington, and the Commandant, General Amos, said, Admiral Wu said, I'll leave him with you guys for 6 months. So General Amos said, just give us 3. We'll take care of it. He brought his head destroyerman and his head submariner. So he brought young people. He didn't bring a bunch of dour old admirals gathering around and squawking about where we want to go. It's what's the future? These are his leaders. Come and sit down and talk to your peers and figure out where we're going to go from here. So that's the intellectual capacity that I mentioned to you, and there's more of that going on out there. So Admiral Wu is going to come back to our International Sea Power Symposium, which is a collection of all the heads of Navy of the free nations. We meet in Newport, Rhode Island every 2 years, and it's next month in October. We have 113 coming of the 131 nations that are available to be invited. So it's kind of a big deal. He's coming to the United States twice in 1 year, which is unprecedented, and he's coming up and he's going to speak. And he's going to lead us in a seminar for how to evacuate citizens in a failing nation. They did that in Libya. They went in to get their Chinese folks out of there, and it was hard. And there were a lot of nations trying to do that. And the question is, can't we do this in an organized manner as professional mariners? And we said, yeah, we can. Let's get together and talk about that. So that's going to be one of the subjects. So throughout it all of these discussions I have, I'll leave you with one last thought. Our asymmetric advantage, and this became very clear 2 weeks ago, Admiral Wu saw it, our asymmetric advantage is our people. People like these junior ROTC folks who went out there. People like you that have served, and people like your sons and daughters and nephews and nieces who are out there serving. That's our big advantage. And this is the 40th anniversary of the all-volunteer force. And thank goodness we have it, because they're amazing kids out there. So think about them when you see them. Tell them thanks for serving. Keep it up. Ask them what they do, but they're going to talk to you about it. What they do, they're very proud of it. Thanks for the opportunity to chat with you, and I look forward to your questions.
The questions we received, many, I was surprised at how similar many of them were, and I've sort of combined a few. John, there were a lot of questions. You talked about cooperation with China and maybe Russia and others. Some of the questions really dealt with how do you see maybe the delta between our capabilities and the Russians? More, how do you see the threat? Are they closing the gap? Where do you see the threats in the world from a naval perspective?
I'll speak to the Russians. They have money now, the Russian country. And they have, in fact, my counterpart, he was here, I've had quite a year, a banner year of visitors. He spent a week, Viktor Cherkov is the head of their Navy, and he said, I have a mandate. My job is to turn around and build the Russian Navy to what it should be. And what that means is they have operating money. So out and about today, if many of us are Cold War sailors, you'll see that same old stuff out there flying around and steaming around. But they're building ships as well. They've capitalized their shipyard. They're just kind of getting rolling on that. If they can keep the economy up, they will try to rebuild the Navy to its Soviet level. First focus will be on their SSBN, its existential support. Second will be their submarine force that supports their SSBN, and they're quite forward about it. And then they want to build a destroyer force that is networked, that is able to go out and build a fleet like that. They still build a lot of things and export them, but now they want to look internal much more. So threat, no, I don't look at that as a threat now. Vigilant, we must be, and they're moving out. So the more we can understand what their intentions are, and the more we can act as responsible citizens of the world, the better off we are.
There were several questions regarding the Middle East and some uniquely naval threats like piracy. With the emphasis on the Pacific now, how do you see the situation in the Middle East and the demands it would put on naval forces? And then how do we address issues like piracy?
Well, make no mistake about it, we can't just leave the Middle East. So our intention is to rebalance to the Asia-Pacific, but we must pay attention to our requirements in the Middle East. So today we have, as you probably know, 4 destroyers in the Eastern Mediterranean. Hey, at any given day we have 3 destroyers in the Eastern Mediterranean, and they're there for ballistic missile defense, protection of Israel and the Middle East, some of the nations of Europe. They're there all the time. The fact that our destroyers are multi-mission, which means they can fire cruise missiles, they can use gun, ASW, and they do ballistic missile defense, all, if you will, simultaneously. That covers that piece of the Middle East. But in the Red Sea, we have a carrier strike group. So again, 80 strike aircraft, 80 aircraft on a carrier with 5 destroyers, with cruise missiles, with ballistic missile defense and anti-air. That's a burden. That's that surge that I was telling you. And so until the Mideast stabilizes, we have to be there. And it's not stable right now, as you well know.
There have been several questions about cooperation with the other services. As a matter of fact, the questions came in about Navy Air Force, Navy Marine, as you would expect, Navy Coast Guard. Can you talk a little bit about how you and the other chiefs of services have been working to find the ways maybe some synergies and jointness can help overcome some of the problems we have with budget cuts and other things that are...
You know, there's the old saying, it's attributed to many, Winston Churchill, some Commodore in the British Navy, but it's like hey, we're out of money, it's time to think. And that's a little bit of kind of where we were. We spent a decade at war, we're still wrapping that up, and we were sort of flush with cash, operating money mostly, and that's drying up. And so many of you are executives in business, you know the deal. You got to think about it. We should have been doing that anyway, but we have to get much more judicious. And we got to stop building the same weapons. I shouldn't be building a cruise missile or an air-launched missile that the Air Force is building if I can make it compatible for both. We're building the same tactical aircraft, the Joint Strike Fighter, all three services. And we have an initiative, it's called Air-Sea Battle. What that is a concept for how to operate and ensure that you can get access anywhere in the world to do the things you need to do. And that's in the case of this, it's air and sea. What does the Air Force bring that I may have, and who does it better? And it's methodically working your way through that conceptually before you get into the situation where you say, hey, what do you got? What do you got? And we're doing this ad hoc. We got to get away from that kind of ad hoc approach and do that. With the Marine Corps, it's a natural institution. It's the combination of what we do. We've been doing this for years. The Marines are rolling back to sea, if you will, and instead of just going out on those 3 big gray hulls with 2,500 Marines, Jim Amos and I and our staffs are sitting down and say, where should we put Marines and what should that breakdown be? Because we don't travel in the formations that you see in the pictures. That's not how things are done. We disaggregate out there around the Arabian Gulf, around the whole Central Command, around the Indian Ocean. We're in various and sundry places with tailored forces to do things like evacuate citizens as necessary, to do things like go off the coast of Syria, to go off the coast of Libya, protect an embassy as necessary, and transition. Counter-piracy, we've done a good job for that. That's an industry that has sort of toned itself down. I don't know how to send a thank you note to pirates, but what that has got us is combined operations for a common cause with the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians. Yeah, the Iranians. They send a ship all down there in that Gulf of Aden area by the Bab el-Mandeb Straits coming out of the Red Sea. So the biggest change and the best actions that we've done with counter-piracy has been the coordinated operations of nations for a common cause, number 1. And 2, working with industry on what are the ways that commercial ships can preclude pirates taking advantage of them. What can they do to deter them, to dissuade them? Piracy remains a threat. It'll pop up anywhere around the world. It shows up every now and again in the Gulf of Oman. It showed up in the Straits of Malacca, and that has been squelched down there due to the Syrians, the Indonesians, and the Malaysians working together. I talked to the Gulf of Aden. Next, the Gulf of Guinea in Western Africa. A lot of oil there, about 10% of the world's oil comes out of there, and piracy is starting to loom up in that direction. So we'll get organized there. It'll be a topic at that symposium I spoke to next month on how do we do command and control for counter-piracy.
We had several questions about morale, given sequestration, rumors about benefit cuts, and there were several questions about what is the young sailor thinking now as he sees all this?
Well, I do all hands calls as often as I can, and I just came down from the Pacific Northwest. I was in San Diego not long ago. And we measure how the force is doing, what we call the health of the force. And it's a subjective kind of good. We'll say good, very good. And what's behind that? It's what we hear and what we observe. That's my way of looking at it. So what we hear from our kids, social media, all hands calls, boy, they write in. I get emails from sailors today. This is an interesting generation. I wouldn't have thought of writing to the CNO, but I get them. They tell me, you're doing okay, and sometimes they say you got a little work to do. You can do better. So what are they thinking? Hey, they think, what about my retirement? It's safe. We're not going to change retirement if you're in uniform. And I ask questions like, hey, where are we going? What's going on with Syria? They're very strategic minded. But that's what we hear. So they're good. Their morale is good, but they want predictability. They want spare parts when they're ready to do their work. They want a supervisor that's competent, and they want the supervisor in place. So they want some sort of predictability and support. I call that their quality of work. You know, they want a high quality of work. They said, my quality of life is pretty good. I'm pretty well paid. I like my housing. I like what you're doing for education. That's why I joined up. But we also watch things like debt, drug use, what am I looking at? Designer drug use, We have an issue that is a very, very big challenge, that's big on my plate, and that's sexual assault that is going on. And that is an undermining, grinding issue that has been going on for a while, and it affects the safety feeling of folks, and it's a long-time effort that we're on. We've got to look at preventing it. We've got to make sure that victims have advocacy, that we prosecute and we hold folks accountable, and that is a big deal. So our kids are feeding back okay. I think I got that. We are meeting recruiting, but it's taking, in any given month, we recruit to quotas. You used to get that quota filled in the first week, and now we're into the second week, so we got to watch that. In retention, we have, I was talking to you about training, and some folks like the Nimitz is out there being extended, and they're out there, the Truman is out there. These are our carriers, and they are flying like crazy, and pilots love to fly. So you got people flying all the time, and that's great for your career. If you're back here and you're not deployed, you're not flying much at all because this training money. So you got a have and a have not. And those kind of imbalances in the force we got to watch out for.
One of the other questions had to do with our traditional deployments to places like the Mediterranean, what the impact of this shift toward the Pacific might have on our commitments there. And also, another one sort of related is the Strait of Hormuz. What happens if Bahrain goes down? What do we do about NAVCEN and Fifth Fleet? So kind of the traditional places we've been in, I've lumped them all in one sort of area.
Okay.
What's the impact?
I've mentioned putting ships forward. I was kind of pushing that in my remarks. And the Spanish government a few years ago said, we'd like to offer you to bring 4 of your Aegis destroyers. Now, these are the ballistic missile defense capable, very multi-mission, very, very high-end. Why don't you bring 4 of them out here with the sailors and with the families? And that's unbelievable. We took that one up and said, you betcha. Because they too have Aegis radar capable ships. Now, an Aegis radar is a very powerful, high resolution. It can see a beer can from 150 miles. It can actually lay it up there and give you a fire control solution. So having that there, should you need it. So imagine what it can do for a ballistic missile. And the point is, having those 4 ships in Rota, Spain, pretty much takes care of the need that we have in our NATO requirements there in the Mediterranean. We've got the ballistic missile requirement there. We have the multi-mission ships. So the 3 that we have today, we have to rotate over from the east coast of the United States, and to just put 1 in the Med takes 4 ships total, because 1's over there, 1's on its way, 1 just came back, and 1's in deep maintenance. And so that rotation wears them out. So we're okay there. In Bahrain, boy, I'll tell you, there's not a good plan B outside of Bahrain. To find a nation that will commit to us like Bahrain has done for 50 years. That's how long we've been in Bahrain, and they've been with us. As you work your way around the countries there, you're outside the Arabian Gulf and you're coming down, you know, the North Arabian Sea, and you're almost into Europe. So east of Suez, it gets tough at that point. So we work with them very closely. We watch the situation. We have an option to move the Fifth Fleet to sea. We could do that. But that loss of that cooperation and that port and the ability to forward station ships would be irreplaceable.
We had several questions about the nuclear threat and also about the cyber threat. So I sort of combined them, if you could sort of address how you see both.
Sure. The nuclear threat would be, and most of it is probably a rogue like would be North Korea. That's the one we keep our eye on. They are avidly and feverishly trying to develop that capability. So we watch that, and they are attributed to have a nuclear capability. Whether they can miniaturize a warhead and put it on a ballistic missile that could go international is subject to some debate. But otherwise, we have a good nuclear deterrent. We will continue to modernize and sustain that, and I've spoken a lot about that in my remarks there. Cyber is a real deal. That's a real challenge. As we speak today, we have cyber warriors, 25,000 of them, out and about around the world, going into networks and systems and battling it out with organized and unorganized, if you will, nation, state, and freewheeling hackers. who are trying to get into all of our networks and exploit data and extract data, and it's a very, very great concern. So one thing I didn't mention that I will now, when it comes to budgetary changes, there's no change in the cyber budget. It is going up. For us, it's people. People are our weapons in cyber right now. There are a lot of automated systems. There's a lot of ways to get into the electromagnetic spectrum, and we work on that. You know, many folks in this general vicinity have companies that help us with that. But cyber is a real national issue.
We've had several questions about allies and allied cooperation. I know Admiral Mullen used to talk about the 1,000-ship Navy. From a naval perspective, could you kind of run down who you see our closest allies are, the ones we work most with, where we have a future alliances or potential ways to work coalition operations together?
Well, this is a little like talking about, you know, family. Who do I leave out? They'll get mad at me, but I'll take a crack at it. The UK remains our longest and closest ally. And the United Kingdom, the Royal Navy, is smaller, but they still have invested in what I call their asymmetric capabilities, the capabilities that are unique. Nuclear submarines, strategic nuclear deterrent, aircraft carrier, and ability to operate from an aircraft carrier, and their Royal Marines and their Royal Air Force. So they have high-end equipment, not much, but they have that. Partnering with them builds, you know, does so much more for us. And the First Sea Lord and I, we talk quite a bit. He's looking very much, and the nation is, at becoming a deployer to the Arabian Gulf. And so a new aircraft carrier of that great capability. So there. We have a building and a relationship with the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force that I'm very excited about, and I've spent 2 tours in Japan. They are reliable, high-end, and very much interested in being a partner in the future. They have a terrific submarine force. They do ballistic missile defense. They are evaluating how they want to change their defense structure, if you will, and their policy. Some of you may have heard of the term collective self-defense that Prime Minister Abe wants to really kind of declare that we can do that. What that means to a sailor is that you can operate together with your ships and protect each other. A strike against one is a strike against the collective group. We do that with NATO today, and so that's Japan, very high-end. Republic of Korea, they have ballistic missile radars, but they don't have the missile yet. The anti-ballistic missile, and they're looking to buy it. So they're becoming very high-end. The country's high-end, obviously, so that would make sense. So sorting that partnership out, that is growing. Republic of Singapore, good partnership for very important missions. Australian Navy, very high-end partner, great command and control, and very reliable. The Southeast Asia countries are really, for specific issues, very interested in operating together, not so much interested in alliance, and I understand that. It's what resonates with the two of us. The NATO nations, the French Navy is the second largest, if you look out there, on just numbers of ships out there, and they're becoming very high-end. I've had many meetings with Admiral Rogel and we're looking to do much more with the French Navy. So there are others that are quite good partners. The UAE is becoming, General Mattis used to call them Little Sparta, and they pretty much are. So we have growing partnerships, but the traditional ones remain very solid.
Admiral, we also had several questions about the role of the Naval Reserve. If going forward you see a different role, possibly the Ready Reserve coming back in some way, but how does the Naval Reserve and the Naval Reserve Forces play into the planning for the Navy?
Some of the capabilities we're bringing in, I mentioned this air vehicle, unmanned aerial vehicle called the Triton, which is a global hawk with marinized sensors. Somebody has to not only operate it, but then manage the systems, the sensors, bring the data in. And that's somebody that would do it at a site, at a station. And this is the kind of skill set that really resonates with the reserve force. someone who could periodically activate and go do this and have that skill set. So unmanned systems is very much something that as we bring them in, our Naval Reserve can continue to do. They do almost all our logistics now, all of our logistics flights, and so as we modernize moving logistics, they're all in that regard. They've become very good at medical, and there are some areas in medical care, especially in a psychological kind of business, that our Naval Reserves are there. So there's some opportunity there as we look. We have a ship, it's called the Littoral Combat Ship. It is a water jet propelled 350-foot jet ski that with a lot of room inside, a lot of volume where we put modules in there, payloads, and we need somebody to operate these counter-mine payloads, anti-submarine warfare payloads, and others. And again, it resonates with the kind of skill set the reserves would have.
We had a question that I know would be right up your alley, but think ahead about 5 or 6 CNOs. What do you think the future of the Navy 20 to 25 years out will look like?
It'll be cyber. It'll be unmanned, to me. It'll be putting together, I think, a Navy of vessels that are better suited to put payloads in. I mean, it's not unlike your computer and applications. We got to get away from having a tower-like Navy with a monitor, you know, a very complicated, integrated, very impressive-looking, you know, ship out there with guns and missile launchers. You say, wow, look at that with this radar, which is very difficult to keep up with the technological changes. So I am starting to, I call it payloads, not platforms. You know, to me, the ship is becoming like a truck. And you bring something in that can plug and play. And I go to industry and I say, I need something that is lethal, fits about like this. It's lasers. We're going to demonstrate the laser a laser gun next summer in the Gulf, in the Arabian Gulf. We've got it installed on, we've installed it on a destroyer and tested it and shot down an unmanned aerial vehicle and blew up a couple of, that's what it looks like right there. So it's got a little bubble there and the thing opens. So we're going to send that out next year, and the idea is it's all about how many kilowatts of energy can you put in that laser, and how much power do you need, and can you regenerate the power? Because if you can, it costs about 85 cents to shoot a laser out there and hold it for about 15 seconds, and that's all it takes to disable an aircraft. 85 cents. It's a lot of bullets. Think about that. The other thing we have is the railgun. You got the backup thing on the railgun there? There we go. So that is what's called a joint high-speed vessel, which is it's a catamaran, right? And it is and on the back you can sort of see the gun there. But this is an electromagnetic, it uses electromagnetic energy to throw a slug of metal. And it throws it at a megajoule, which means it really goes fast. And it has a lot of energy, and when it hits, it has an explosive effect as it releases the energy that is extraordinary, and it can penetrate just about anything. So this, so you don't have explosives, right? You don't have ammunition and all the worry of that. You just have slugs of metal that you can then put anything from GPS in it to change in its direction. So you put that, we're going to test it here in about 2 years on the back of that kind of auxiliary ship. And imagine that we'll get the right energy level, and that can turn probably into something like anti-ballistic missile and really long ranges of shells. So that kind of thing's in the future, I think.
If I could take you back to personnel issues, we've had several questions regarding the suicide rate. I know that's plagued all the services, but maybe you could talk a little bit about what's being done, what you may see as causes, and maybe any insights you have.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll tell you, this is a tough one. For the Navy, we have not had near the levels of the Army, and that sort of makes sense. We're smaller. Our kids have not been under the stress that the ground forces have. But I tell you this, I've had smart people, I've sat down with smart people and talked to them. I don't know why our sailors take why they kill themselves. I couldn't tell you. And we kind of thought we could connect, the causes, and therefore if you have causal factors, change that, and that'll change the vector to go down. But we haven't found anything that is directly related. But here's what I know. Talking to kids who have come in and said, I think I'm going to do something to myself, They say, if somebody would just talk to me, if somebody gets to me before I become so distraught, before I come to the point where I have made up my mind that I can actually hurt myself, that I could do that to myself, and that I ever actually reach the point where I am so distraught that I'm better off dead than alive, then I won't do it. So we teach our kids, look at each other, know each other. If somebody's funny, but now they're not, that's a problem. If somebody is not funny, and now they are, that's a problem. That's one. Two, it's about teaching them resiliency. Everybody goes through debt problems, addiction, marital problems, relationship problems, struggling with who they are, and all of that. So understanding how to deal with that, we've pulled a lot of programs together from a lot of organizations and institutions. And it's to make us a more resilient sailor and tell them it isn't about your time in the Navy, it's being a more resilient person. And this will serve you in the Navy and it'll serve you outside the Navy, because as an adult you're going to go through all of this. When they're more resilient, they're more confident, they're better able to interact, and then we can take on things like this sexual assault thing I talked to you before about. Know each other, respect each other, understand each other, and have the tolerance that you need. And these kids in this society are more, in this generation I should say, are more likely to do that.
Well, another issue that's closer to today, did you see anything in America's Cup in terms of the designs that you think you might be able to carry over to the Navy?
Well, we have, it's kind of funny, we have this new cruiser that we will launch here in October, and it has what's called a tumble home design. And what it effectively means, it's like if you look at a ship, the bow kind of has a V shape. It has an inverted V shape, and what that does, it makes it much more maneuverable. It makes it much quieter in the water, and it makes it look like on radar more like a fishing boat than a 695-foot cruiser. And so when I look out there, I see that sort of design on the America's Cup, hull design. These are the sorts of things we need, but we need payloads, not platforms.
Well, this is our last question, and you're not going to get out of San Francisco without answering. When is Fleet Week coming back?
Ah, yes, yes, yes. Well, I bring you perhaps good news. So last year, because of sequestration, two reasons. One is we had our budget reduced, but the real reason was sequestration didn't get started. We had a full year's worth of reduction given to us with about 2/3 of a year. So you have to go where the money is and just reduce it to reduce your expenditure rate. So things like outreach programs, Fleet Weeks, they got the axe. We shut down the Blue Angels, which was really tough. So we went to the Secretary of Defense, the service chiefs, and we said, boss, we can't not have outreach. And he said, well, how do I do this with all the budget? And we said, we have to connect with America. They have to know our soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen. So he said, all right, so we've been working at it, and we're about to strike a deal here. So we'll take a reduction in outreach. There'll be less Fleet Weeks, but this is a very popular one. So stay tuned. I think we can pull something off.
Well, I think you'd all agree with me that we're fortunate to have as our first Sea Lord, John, and please join me in thanking him for attending the Shultz.